I've been to school or I went to school. The staff have worked or the staff worked. Which one should I choose? Advanced English Grammar is all about choosing between rules as well as knowing rules. And that's what we're going to explore in this video. You're going to learn 25 situations where you need to choose between the past simple and the present perfect. I'm going to provide the situation and explain which tense you should use and why. We'll start with basic rules, then intermediate rules, and then the advanced rules, C1 to C2. We'll begin with the basic rules, and first of all, general rules for where we choose between the past simple and the present perfect. First of all, the past simple is used for finished time. For example, 2024 was a difficult year. 2024 has finished. This video is being produced in 2025. So 2024 is a completely finished time period. So it's normal to use the past simple. But for unfinished time, it's normal to use the present perfect. For example, 2025 has been wonderful so far. I'm writing this video in 2025, so the time period has not finished. I'm describing a time period that's still going on. And in general, I would use the present perfect to describe this unfinished time, although there are some exceptions to these rules that we're going to explore later in this video. Secondly, the past simple is often used for what's called definite time, and the present perfect is used for indefinite time. Let's imagine you're going on a trip to the Taj Mahal, and in fact the trip is over. I visited the Taj Mahal last week, you say. Now, last week is definite time. We have a definite point in time here. Last week. We know exactly when this time was. Because we know the exact time, use the past simple, visited. But in the second sentence, I have visited the Taj Mahal. Well, that happened in the past, but we don't know exactly when. It's indefinite. We aren't sure exactly what the time is. So the general rule is use the present perfect, but again, keep watching for some exceptions that will come up. And then the third general rule is that the present perfect indicates present relevance. Look at the example with the keys. Let's go. Imagine you're going on a trip somewhere and the other people in the trip say, let's go. And you ask, have you picked up the keys? And they reply, yes, I've picked them up. So here we use I've picked them up, present perfect. And that's because there's present relevance in the question that I asked. The keys are important for what's happening now. The idea is that you picked up the keys just before perhaps getting into the car, and the keys are necessary to drive the car to where you want to go. There's present relevance. But with the past simple, we indicate past relevance. Compare with the next example here. Let's enter our holiday home. Let's imagine that we've arrived at our destination. It's a holiday home, and here we are. Let's enter. But then, wait, we have a question. Did you pick up the keys before we left? No, I didn't. So we can't enter the holiday home. Our focus is on the past situation. The relevance is to the past. Did you do something in the past? In other words, before we left, because before we left is in the past. That's our focus here. And because our focus here is before we left, we use the past simple. So these are three general rules that help us choose between the past simple and the present perfect. But now let's go into a bit more detail as we go into the intermediate rules. And firstly, we're going to look at the word for. In general, we use for with the present perfect when the time period hasn't ended, and we use for with the past simple when the time period is fully in the past. Compare the examples. First of all, the present perfect. I have lived here for 3 years. That means I started living 3 years before now, and I'm still living there today. I'm linking the past to the present. The time period hasn't ended here. But in the second one, I lived in Rio for 3 years. This doesn't mean the same. This means I lived in Rio in the past, and the period of time I lived in Rio lasted 3 years. And it's not still going on. It finished at a certain point. If it started 4 years ago, then it finished 1 year ago. There's 3 years in between. With since, there's a small complication that we're going to come to. But in general, since is usually used with the present perfect and not with the past simple. When I say I have lived here since 2022, that means I entered the house or I owned the house for the first time in 2022 and it's still true now. Present perfect applies. But when since introduces a clause with a past situation, use the verb in the past simple within that clause. So the example's changed a bit now. I have lived here since I was a child. So since is not just introducing a time or a date now. It's introducing a whole clause that gives us the time. And the clause is to do with the past, a time when I was a child. So because the whole clause is a past clause, use the past simple within this clause. We still use the present perfect with the main verb have lived. With indefinite time phrases, that's time phrases where we don't have a clear idea of exactly what the time is. We usually use the present perfects. Already, just, yet, and ever would usually go with the present perfect, with some exceptions I'm going to come to. Look at the meal here. The food has disappeared. What has happened? They have already eaten the meal. We don't know exactly when. We just know that it's before now. Nothing else. With time phrases that are more definite, then we usually use the past simple. So yesterday, a year ago, last week. They finished the meal an hour ago. So an hour ago is more definite. It's more precise. We can put our finger on a calendar or a timetable or on a watch or clock, and we can say this was the time. And with phrases like these, we will use the past simple. However, if these indefinite time phrases that we looked at in the last slide are used for a time period which was completed in the past, and the context is a story set in the past, use the past perfect. That's a lot to take in, so let's walk through an example to help you understand. They left the restaurant. They had already finished the meal. So the context is a story set in the past. We're talking about the past now. They left the restaurant. When did they leave the restaurant? In the past. So our context is the past. And now we're talking about something that happened before they left the restaurant. They had already finished the meal. So here we use the past perfect because it's something linking an event in the past to a situation that's also in the past. The situation is they left the restaurant, and the event that happened sometime before that, we don't know exactly when, but it's between a time before that and when they left the restaurant, they had already finished the meal. So with words such as already, just, yet, ever, we often do that. Are you finding this useful? If you are, you might find some of my online courses useful too. Click on the links in the description to find out more. Let's move on to another time phrase, how long. With how long, use the present perfect for durations up to now. Look at this lady. You might say this lady is a really good friend. And the question in response would be, how long have you known her? Now, because the person we're speaking to said, this lady is a really good friend, that means they're a good friend now. So in this case, we're interested in how long the knowing happened between the start of knowing her and now, because we know she is still a friend now. But when we're using how long for durations up to a point in the past, use the past simple. How long did you live with her? Until 2 years ago. Until 2 years ago. 2 years ago is a point in the past. So how long did you live with her means how long up to the point where it stopped. So you would ask this question if you knew that she wasn't living with her now. She lived with her in the past. She lived with her for a period of time. Then it stopped, but that's not now. Now is after the time it stopped. So in that case, use the past simple. How long did you live with her? Now, ever is commonly used with the present perfect as well, as we've mentioned before. But you could use the past simple if the time period is obviously limited to a completed past period. Look at the two questions here. Have you ever been to England? So ever is used here to mean at any time in the whole of history between the beginning of time in the past and now. Have you ever been to England? If the answer is yes, then the next question could be something slightly different. It could be, did you ever visit Big Ben? And that means, okay, you've told me that you have lived in England. Within that time that you lived in England, I have another question about that time. I have another question about the time that you lived in England, about visiting Big Ben. So because we now have a limited time period that we're asking about, just the time that the person was in England, we switch to the past simple to ask it because it's a limited time period. Did you ever instead of have you ever? It's important to note that there are some regional variations with time phrases. In some variations of English, such as American English, time phrases such as just, already and yet are often used with the past simple instead of the present perfect. So instead of saying I have just eaten lunch, someone in America might say, oh, I just ate lunch. And because of the influence of America on movies, music, literature, and so on, this kind of use is actually spreading more widely across the world. So you might hear this just about anywhere where people will use these words with the past simple instead. Let's go on to advanced rules where we're choosing between the past simple and the present perfect. And first of all, we're looking at the topic of reporting information. Now, this might be reporting information that's about you, or it could be a news broadcaster reporting information. Let's start off with this. I have been involved in many accidents. It's a fairly general statement, and I've used the present perfect here. Why? When introducing a report with a general statement about a story, the present perfect is often used. It's probably useful for me to go to the next part to explain this further. After, the past simple is used to give specific details about the story. So look at the contrast. Introducing goes with the present perfect. Then giving the specific details goes with the past simple. Let's go through the whole story as it appears here. I have been involved in many accidents. I fell off my bike and broke my arm. I tripped over a step and broke my toe. Very unfortunate. What's happened here? I've introduced my story with the present perfect. I'm making it general. I have been involved in many accidents. This covers everything I'm going to say in the story. It doesn't need to be time bound. That's the general information. That's the background. That's getting us started. Then in the next two sentences, I switch to the past simple because I'm being specific about these accidents. I fell off my bike and broke my arm. I tripped over a step and broke my toe. I've moved to the specific information, and because I'm being more specific, the time is not to do with all of time. I only fell off my bike once in time. I only broke my arm once in time. So here we move to the past simple because these are the details about the story. And that's a very common tactic to use when reporting. Start with the present perfect to give a general statement covering everything, and then when you go to the specifics, move to the past simple. Now, sometimes news reporters do something that may surprise you, and if you go through news reports on the internet or in magazines or in newspapers, you'll see this from time to time. Look at the example with the volcano. There has been a volcanic eruption 20 minutes ago at a nearby mountain. Wait a moment. Didn't you tell me, Rupert, earlier in this video that if you have a definite time period, you need to use the past simple? Well, yes, but news reporters often change this for this reason. To make events appear more immediate, the present perfect is sometimes used by news reporters instead of the past simple. So what are they doing? You turn on your television and you watch the news, and the news broadcaster wants you to feel that you are getting the very latest information, the newest information, the most current information. How do we give that sense? By using the present perfect, because the present perfect gives things present relevance. So even though technically I should have used the past simple because I've got a specific moment in time 20 minutes ago that's in the past, it's incomplete, it has been completed. Even despite this, for effect, I use the present perfect. But this also works the other way round. Look at the next example. What's the news? Oh, the volcano erupted. So here we should have used the present perfect because we don't have a definite time period. But we use the past simple instead. The volcano erupted. Why? To be brief when summarising an event, the past simple is sometimes used when reporting with indefinite time. So if I want to get the information over quickly, I'll cut out words. And sometimes reporters will cut out the present perfect in order just to get the key information over in as few words as possible. The volcano erupted. Well, that still gives you the same sense of the story as saying the volcano has erupted. So we've condensed the information. That sometimes happens too. Let's move on to determiners, such as the word that. What do we do with that? Well, usually that is used with the past simple, but it can also be used with the present perfect. Now, the reason why it's usually used with the past simple is because the context of that normally fits the past simple. That is a word that describes things that are far away, either far away in distance or far away in time. And if something is far away in time, it normally means it's in the past. It could possibly be for the future, but it's far from now. So because I have this sense of distance from the present, I'm likely to use the past simple. And that's what happens in the first example. That was an amazing match. Maybe you've gone to this match and you've watched people play, you've left it, and as you're walking home, you say to your friend, that was an amazing match. Because there's some distance in time between when you saw the match and now. So that was. But sometimes the present perfect does fit the context. Look at the score. That has broken the record. So here we're looking, perhaps we're in the stadium and we look at the score on the scoreboard. And as we're looking, we see that this event has taken place. That has broken the record. Well, here maybe we're using the word that to describe something that's perhaps far away in terms of sight, or something that has just happened, but we want to show that it's got present relevance too. That has broken the record. So the record was broken very close to now. So to give it that feeling of now or close to the present, we will use the present perfect. But because of the general meaning of the word that, we're more likely to use the past simple. With this, we usually use it with the present perfect. And again, that's because of this sense of distance. With that, we're creating a sense of distance from now in time to when something happened. But this brings it closer. With this, we're emphasizing the nearness. This can be with distance, but it can also be with time. this being near in time. And because we're emphasizing a nearness in time to now, nearness in time to the present perfect is most natural. For example, this is the first time he has won the prize. So this person hitting the ball has won a prize for some reason, and it happened now, and we're emphasizing the nearness to now by saying this and has won. The clue is in the verb after this. This is present simple verb, naturally goes with present perfect to describe the thing that happened just before now. However, we can use this with the past simple, but it's not normal. When we do use the past simple and this together, it feels reflective. It's like we are deliberately looking back at something from the present time. The event has finished, we've moved on to the present time, and now we think about the past deliberately. So it's like we're taking the past situation and we're bringing it into the present as we think. That's what reflection does, isn't it? Look at the rest of the example then. The opponents had won 5 times in a row. This was the first time they had lost in years. So when did they lose? Well, it's before now because it's this was. But we use this to give a sense of bringing the situation into our minds, into the present. We're deliberating upon a past activity more deliberately here. Now for some other choices. So to finish this video, I have 7 other important things that you need to know when choosing between the past simple and the present perfect. The first one is with this word having. We can often use the word having to make a participle phrase that introduces the rest of a sentence. Let's look at the examples first, and then I'll go through the explanation. We're back to the keys and the hotel again. Having found the keys, we entered the hotel. Having read the reviews of the hotel, I am really excited about visiting. Let's go back to the first one. Having found the keys. In other words, I found the keys, and because of that, I entered the hotel because I had the keys to open the door. So here we're linking a past situation to a present outcome. But the way we do it is by using a participle phrase. Instead of saying, I found the keys and we entered the hotel, I found the keys into a participle phrase, having found the keys. So here we use having as the present participle of the verb have, so it's kind of like the present perfect, and then found is in the past participle form. And we can make phrases beginning having with the past participle in this way to link a past situation with its present outcome. And by doing this, it makes the connection and the link between the two parts closer. If I had said, I found the keys and I entered the hotel, I've got 2 past events. They're not as linked as if I say, having found the keys, we entered the hotel. And when we do this, we use having, the present participle for have. Note that in the first example, we're talking about something in the past, but we can also use this to introduce something in the present. Having read the reviews of the hotel, I am really excited about visiting. So here we link the past situation to the present outcome. I read the reviews in the past. The present outcome is now I'm really excited. In the first example, we actually linked a past situation with a past outcome. I found the keys and then I entered the hotel. Both are in the past. So whether the main clause is in the past or the present, we can use this having clause, participle phrase to introduce information that is relevant to the outcome. In very informal conversations, have can be dropped completely in front of got. So instead of saying, sorry, I have got to go, sometimes informally, people will simply say, sorry, I got to go. Or they'll even shrink this more to say, sorry, I gotta go. Gotta go. A very common conversational use of got in English. We're still in the present perfect here, but we've omitted it. We've left it out. What we mean is I have got to go, but we're saying it quickly, so we drop the have. Other situations with got can be similar. What you got means what have you got? The present perfect can be used to give a sense of achievement, even if this relates to actions that were in the past. Look at the example. We finished our exams. Great. When was the last one? Oh, yesterday morning. So the exams actually finished yesterday morning. They actually finished in the past. But I've said, we've finished. Present perfect. Now, why did I say we finished our exams? Because I'm communicating this sense of achievement. I'm focusing on the overall outcome of what happens when you finish exams. We have finished our exams. I've achieved this. Even though the last exam wasn't now, even though the last exam was in the past. What do you think of this example here? I sold my first book today. Sold is past simple. Today is an unfinished time phrase. Sold is a single action. And single actions within an unfinished time period can be expressed with the past simple. Why? In order to emphasize the fact that it or they happened earlier within the time period. So today, let's say it's 8 o'clock in the evening today. When did this selling happen? Well, not at 8 o'clock, not now. It happened perhaps at 10 a.m. this morning. So it's within today, but it's still in the past. It's in the past part of today. It's in an earlier completed part of today. So even though I've used an unfinished time period, I'm talking about something that happened earlier within that time period. And for this reason, I can use the past simple. I could use the present perfect. That would mean the whole of today. But if I use the past simple, I simply mean it's at a specific earlier moment today. Use the present perfect for actions repeated many times between the past and now. Some countries sell lottery tickets. People buy a lottery ticket and they hope to win millions of whatever your currency is, dollars, euros, pounds, or maybe even billions in other currencies. Look at the example. I have tried to win the lottery 10 times this year. It's a repeated action. 10 times. I bought a ticket once, I bought a ticket twice, on and on until 10 times have passed. And within this year, this repeated action has happened 10 times. So use the present perfect for this. With past events leading to a present situation, we usually use the present perfect when the subject isn't identified. For example here, look at this window. What's happened to it? Well, the window has been smashed. We have no subject here. It's in the passive form. We only have the object. Often we'll use the present perfect for this kind of situation. But when the subject is identified, we often switch to the past simple, as this leads to a focus on the cause. Compare with the next example. My neighbour's children smashed the window. So in the first one, the window has been smashed. No subject. In the second one, my neighbour's children smashed the window. We have a subject, past simple. Now, we could have used the present perfect or the past simple in both examples, depending on what we wanted to communicate, whether it was something that happened at a specific time period or something that happened in general between the past and now. But it's very common to follow this pattern. No subject, will keep it general. My window has been smashed. Once we have the subject, then the focus switches on to when it happened, because they did the activity at a specific moment in time. And look at the final example here. I hope this is an experience that you have had. The exam isn't as hard as I thought. When comparing past expectations to present reality, use the past simple for the expectation. The expectation is, I thought it would be hard. The reality was, it isn't that hard. Notice the difference in the time here. The exam isn't, that's now. I thought, that's past. Normally, you would expect to use the present perfect here, because you're linking something in the past to the situation now. But in this situation where we're comparing the past expectation to the present reality, and we use a verb to express the past expectation, stay in the past simple.